Ashley went up to the attic, searching for some old suitcases. What she found there made her drop everything she was holding. Her cousin Tommy, who had been deaf since birth, was clutching a guitar to his chest, and he was crying. But not from sadness. It was something she'd never seen in his eyes before. Awe, pure awe, profound awe. Like he'd discovered a world that had always been there, but that he'd never been able to see. If you've ever wondered if it's possible to feel music without hearing it, stick around until the end of this story. Because what happened in that attic changed everything Ashley thought she knew. Let me tell you how it all began. Tommy was born deaf, completely deaf. It wasn't partial hearing loss. It wasn't something that could be fixed with hearing aids or implants. It was total silence. From the very first day of his life. His parents knew something was wrong when he was 8 months old. He didn't react to sounds. He didn't turn his head when they called his name. He didn't startle at loud noises. Once, his mother dropped a metal pot, only a few feet away from him. The clang sent everyone in the kitchen jumping, but Tommy just kept playing with his blocks, like nothing had happened. That was the moment they knew something was really wrong. They took him to specialists, first one, then another, then a third. They all said the same thing. The diagnosis was devastating. Profound bilateral sensorineural hearing loss. In simple terms, the nerves that connect the ear to the brain had never functioned and never would. His parents cried that night. They cried for the silence their son would only ever know. They cried for the lullabies he would never hear. They cried for his mother's voice he would never recognize. But the next day, they got up and decided that Tommy's deafness wouldn't be a life sentence. It would simply be a different way to live. Tommy grew up in a world of silence. He learned sign language from the age of 3. He went to specialized schools where everyone was like him, where no one looked at him strangely for not hearing, where communication was visual, beautiful, fluid. He had deaf friends who understood his world, friends who knew what it was like to live without sound, friends who didn't treat him like he was broken. He had a normal life, or at least, that's what it looked like from the outside. His grades were good, and his family loved him. He had a talent for art. His teachers said he saw things that others didn't, that he had a special sensitivity, that the silence had given him something others didn't have. Absolute concentration. The ability to observe without distractions, to see the world as it really was. But there was something that always haunted him, something he couldn't ignore, something that made him feel incomplete. Music. Tommy saw people listening to music, and he didn't understand. He saw how they closed their eyes, how they moved their heads, how some cried, how others smiled. He saw couples embracing when a special song came on. He saw old people crying, remembering times gone by. He saw young people jumping and screaming at concerts, and he couldn't comprehend what it was they were feeling. What was that invisible thing that had so much power? That could make someone cry. That could make someone dance. That could unite strangers. That could bring back forgotten memories. That could change a person's mood in seconds. Tommy saw all this from the outside. As if he were looking through glass, he could see the party, but he couldn't participate. He could see the joy, but he couldn't feel it. It was like being a ghost in his own world. Once, when he was 12 years old, he asked his mother, "Mom, what is music?" His mother didn't know how to answer. How do you explain color to someone who was born blind? How do you explain sound to someone who was born deaf? It's something you hear, son. His mother signed the words with sadness. It's like talking, but more beautiful. Tommy didn't understand, and his mother couldn't explain it any better. From that day on, Tommy stopped asking, but he never stopped wondering. Ashley was Tommy's cousin, 10 years older. She'd always taken care of him like he was her little brother. When Tommy's parents died in an accident 5 years ago, Ashley took him into her home. It was a car accident. A drunk driver ran a red light, killed them instantly. Tommy wasn't with them that night. He was at a friend's house. That decision saved his life, but it marked him forever. When they gave him the news, he didn't scream. He couldn't. He only signed one question. Why? No one could answer him. Ashley arrived that same night. She hugged Tommy, and without saying a word, took him to her house. It was natural. It was the right thing to do. It was what his parents would have wanted. Tommy was 17 then. Now he was 22. 5 years had passed. 5 years of rebuilding a life. 5 years of learning to live with the pain. He was studying art in college. He painted abstract art that Ashley didn't understand, but that the critics adored. There was something in his paintings, an intensity, an emotion, like Tommy could see things that others didn't. Ashley always wondered if it was because the silence allowed him to observe better, without distractions of sound, without noise interrupting his concentration, just him and the visual world that surrounded him. Lucy came to Ashley's house 6 months ago, not as a caregiver, not as a nanny, as a housekeeper, 34 years old, single mother to an 8-year-old named Lily. Divorced 3 years ago from a man who had made her feel less intelligent, less capable, less valuable. The divorce destroyed her. Not because she loved him, but because he made her doubt herself. For months, Lucy sank into a deep depression. She didn't want to get up. She didn't want to eat. She didn't want to live. It was the guitar that saved her. The same guitar her father had when he died. One day, without knowing why, she picked it up and started to play. And something changed. The notes reminded her of her father, of the afternoons together, of the songs they sang, of moments of pure love, and little by little, the music healed her. That's why she carried that old guitar everywhere. It wasn't just an instrument. It was a reminder that she had survived, that she could survive anything. That music would always be there to hold her up. Ashley hired her because she needed help with the house. It was big, too big for a single woman and a deaf young man. And Lucy seemed hardworking, honest, with good references. What Ashley didn't know was that Lucy held a secret that would change Tommy's life. Forever. Lucy's father had been deaf since birth, just like Tommy. And when Lucy was a little girl, her father had taught her something she never forgot. That music isn't heard, it's felt. Her father couldn't hear the songs Lucy played on her little toy guitar, but he felt them. He'd put his hand on Lucy's throat when she sang. He'd feel the vibrations. He'd press the guitar against his chest, but he'd feel the strings vibrate. He'd put his bare feet on the wooden floor. He'd feel the rhythm of the world. Sometimes, he'd sit her on his lap and strum chords on the guitar, and she'd see his face light up, his smile grow, his eyes close, as if he were listening to something divine. But he wasn't listening. he was feeling. And that difference changed everything. "Dad," Lucy asked him once, "how do you know it's good if you can't hear it?" Her father smiled and signed, "The heart doesn't need ears to know something is beautiful." Lucy didn't understand then. She was too little. But those words were etched into her memory. And years later, she would understand exactly what they meant. Lucy, at just 6 years old, learned that music was so much more than sound. It was vibration, it was energy, it was something that went through the skin and reached the soul. It was the universal language. That didn't need ears, only heart. Her father died when she was 15. A heart attack. Without warning, without a goodbye. Lucy came home from school and found him on the couch with her guitar in his hands. He'd been feeling the vibrations of the strings, like he did every day, like he had since Lucy had learned to play. The doctor said he died peacefully, that he probably didn't even feel any pain. But Lucy felt enough pain for both of them. She lost her father, and she lost the only person who understood that music was more than sound. For years, Lucy kept that lesson deep within her heart. She didn't talk about her father. She didn't talk about how he felt the music. It was a memory too painful, too private, but she never forgot. And the guitar he held in his hands when he died became her most prized possession. The same guitar she took everywhere, the same guitar that had saved her from depression after her divorce, the same guitar that, without her knowing, was going to change the life of a young deaf man until she met Tommy. The first meeting between Lucy and Tommy was accidental. Lucy was cleaning the living room when Tommy came downstairs. She had her guitar propped against the couch. She always carried it. It was her companion, her therapy. After the divorce, the guitar had saved her from depression. Tommy saw the guitar and stopped. He looked at it with curiosity, with that intense look he had, as if he were trying to understand it. Lucy noticed him staring, and without thinking, she did something that surprised even herself. She picked up the guitar, she walked over to Tommy, and she pressed it against his chest. Tommy looked at her, confused. He didn't understand what this woman was doing. Lucy began to strum the strings gently, a simple chord, C major, and something happened on Tommy's face. His eyes widened, his mouth opened. He was feeling something. The vibrations of the strings went through the wood of the guitar, reached his chest, traveled through his bones, reached his heart. Tommy had never felt anything like it. It was as if something inside of him had awakened, something that had always been dormant. Lucy saw his reaction and smiled. "My father used to do the same thing," she signed. Tommy looked at her, surprised. "You know sign language. My father was deaf." Lucy kept playing the guitar against Tommy's chest, and Tommy, for the first time in his life, began to understand not what music was, but that it was something real, something he could feel, something that existed beyond sound. Lucy looked at him, and in his eyes, she saw something she recognized, the same curiosity she had seen in her father's eyes, the same hunger to connect, the same need to be part of something that the world denied him. And in that moment, something stirred inside Lucy. something that had been dormant for almost 20 years. Since her father died, it was as if he was pushing her, as if he was saying, "Show him what I taught you. Give him what I gave you. Don't let him live without knowing what music is." Lucy wasn't religious. She didn't believe in ghosts. But at that moment, she felt her father as close as if he were standing right next to her. And she knew she had to do something. She didn't know what exactly. She didn't have a plan. But she knew she couldn't leave Tommy in that silence. Not when she had the tools to show him that there was something more. That was the beginning of it all. If this story is touching your heart, consider showing your support with super thanks. That golden button you see below. It is your way of saying, this story deserves to be told. And now comes what nobody expected. Tommy started seeking Lucy out, not to clean his room, not to make him food, but to show him more. More of that thing he had felt. More of those vibrations that had gone through his chest. Lucy, at first, didn't know what to do. She wasn't a music teacher. She wasn't a therapist. She was a housekeeper. But something in Tommy's eyes convinced her. The same curiosity she had seen in her father's eyes. The same hunger to understand. The same need to connect with something that the world had denied him. So began the secret sessions. Always in the attic. Away from Ashley. Away from everyone. Lucy didn't want anyone to see her. She didn't want them to think she was wasting her time, that she wasn't doing her job, that she was meddling where she didn't belong. But she couldn't help it. She looked at Tommy, and she saw her father. She saw someone who deserved to feel what she felt when she played the guitar. She saw someone who deserved to know that music existed and that he could be part of it. The first sessions were simple. Lucy would press the guitar against Tommy's chest. She'd play different chords, and Tommy would describe what he felt. "It's like tickles in my chest," he signed. "Sometimes strong, sometimes soft." Lucy nodded. "That's the volume. Strong is more vibration, soft is less." Tommy processed the information. It was the first time someone had explained music to him, in terms he could understand. Not in terms of sound, but in terms of sensation. After that, Lucy taught Tommy about rhythm. She placed Tommy's hand on her throat while she sang. 1, 2, 3, 4. Tommy felt the pulses, the heartbeat of the music, the heart of the song. "This is rhythm," Lucy signed. "It's like walking. One step, another step, another step." Tommy started tapping his foot on the floor, in rhythm, without hearing it, but feeling it. Lucy smiled. "Exactly. That's it." Tommy smiled too. It was the first time someone had told him he was doing something musical correctly. The weeks went by. The sessions became more complex. Lucy taught Tommy about high notes and low notes. "High notes vibrate fast," she explained. "You feel them here." She placed Tommy's hand on his forehead. "Low notes vibrate slowly. You feel them here." She placed Tommy's hand on his chest. Tommy began to distinguish them, the fast vibrations, the slow vibrations. It was like learning a new language, a language that wasn't spoken with words. It was spoken with the body. And Tommy was a brilliant student. He learned quickly, absorbing everything Lucy taught him. He asked questions she had never considered. One day, Tommy asked something that left her speechless. "Why do people cry with music?" Lucy thought for a long moment. How do you explain the emotions of music to someone who's never heard it? It was like explaining the color red to someone blind. But Lucy tried. Music can make you feel things, she signed. Sadness, joy, nostalgia, love. Every song has an emotion. And when you feel it, that emotion fills you. Sometimes so much that you cry. Tommy processed the information. But I don't feel emotions when I feel the vibrations. I just feel the vibrations. Lucy smiled. Not yet, but you will. When you understand better how it works, when your body learns to translate the vibrations into emotions, you will cry. I promise you. Tommy didn't believe her, not completely, but he continued learning, continued feeling, continued exploring this new world that was opening up before him. And each day, each session, he came closer to understanding what Lucy had promised him. One day, Lucy brought balloons. Balloons filled with air. Tommy looked at her, confused. Lucy inflated a large balloon. She placed it in Tommy's hands and started playing the guitar near him. The balloon vibrated. Tommy felt it in his hands. It was as if the balloon were alive, as if the music were moving it. This is what music looks like, Lucy signed. Not with your eyes, with your hands. Tommy pressed the balloon against his chest and felt every note, every chord, every change in the melody. It was incredible. It was as if a new world had opened before him, a world that had always been there, but that no one had shown him how to see. The sessions in the attic became Tommy's favorite part of the day, and Lucy's too. There was something special about that place, something magical. The attic was full of old things, dusty old suitcases, antique furniture, family photos in boxes. But for Tommy and Lucy, it was a sanctuary, a place where silence wasn't absence, it was presence. It was the canvas where they painted with vibrations. Lucy learned as much from Tommy as he learned from her. She learned to see music in ways she had never imagined. Tommy would show her his drawings of sound waves. He explained how he imagined each note looked. The high notes were thin, fast lines. The low notes were thick, slow curves. The chords were explosions of colors. The silences were white spaces. It was a completely new way of understanding music, a way that only someone who had never heard it could create. Lucy began to compose thinking about how Tommy would see her songs. She no longer thought only about how they sounded. She thought about how they would feel, how they would look, how they would reach the soul of someone who couldn't hear them. It was a profound change, a change that made her a better musician, a better person, a better teacher, and all thanks to a young, deaf man who showed her that there was so much more to music than she knew. Ashley had no idea what was happening in her own house. She was busy with her businesses, with her hotels, with her meetings. She saw Tommy at dinners. She saw him painting in his studio. She saw him as normal, or at least what she considered normal for him. She didn't notice that his paintings had changed. Before, Tommy painted abstract shapes, lines, circles, splashes of color. Now he painted waves, curves that went up and down, as if he were drawing the sound. Ashley saw him one day. "What is this?" she signed. Tommy smiled. "It's music." Ashley didn't understand. How can it be music? You can't hear music. Tommy looked at her with those eyes that had changed. They were no longer the eyes of someone who didn't understand. They were the eyes of someone who had discovered a secret. "I don't need to hear it," he signed. "I feel it." Ashley frowned. She didn't know what her cousin was talking about, but she didn't give it much thought. Tommy had always been artistic, He had always seen the world differently. Maybe this was just another one of his creative phases. She didn't know that Tommy was about to show her something that would change everything she thought she knew. The day of the discovery came without warning. Ashley had to travel. A hotelier conference in another city. She needed her old suitcases, the ones she kept in the attic. She climbed the dusty stairs, opened the attic door, and froze. Tommy was sitting on the floor. He had a guitar, Lucy's guitar, pressed against his chest. And he was crying. Not from sadness. Ashley knew Tommy's tears of sadness. She had seen them when his parents died. She had seen them when he felt alone. These tears were different. They were tears of something she couldn't name. Wonder, revelation. As if Tommy had seen God, or at least something equally powerful. Lucy was sitting across from him, playing another guitar, one that Ashley didn't know existed. The melody was soft, slow, beautiful. And Tommy felt it. Every note, every vibration, traveling through the wood, reaching his bones, reaching his heart. Ashley wanted to speak, wanted to ask what was happening, but something stopped her. The expression on her cousin's face, an expression she had never seen. Peace, connection, as if he had finally found something he had been searching for his whole life. The song ended. Lucy lowered the guitar. Tommy opened his eyes, and he saw Ashley standing in the doorway. For a split second, there was panic in his face, like he'd been caught doing something wrong. But then, something shifted. Tommy smiled, a huge smile, open, filled with something Ashley could only describe as joy. "Cousin," he signed, "I know what music is now." Ashley didn't know what to say. She walked downstairs behind Tommy and Lucy. They all sat down in the living room, and Lucy told her everything. She told her about her deaf father, about how he'd taught her that music is felt, about the vibrations, the balloons, the sessions in the attic. Ashley listened in silence. She didn't know whether to be angry or grateful. On one hand, her housekeeper had been doing something without her permission. On the other hand, she'd achieved something Ashley never could, connecting Tommy with music. Ashley was torn. Part of her was furious. Her housekeeper had been doing something without her say-so. She'd been using her work time to teach music. She'd been keeping it a secret for months. But another part of her was in AU. She'd seen her cousin cry, not from pain, not from frustration, but from something beautiful, from something she'd never been able to give him. Ashley had tried everything. She'd taken Tommy to concerts for the deaf. She'd bought special equipment that amplified vibrations. She'd hired therapists and specialists. But nothing had worked. Nothing had made Tommy feel music the way he felt it now. And a housekeeper, with an old guitar and a lot of love, had achieved the impossible. Ashley looked at Lucy. She saw her differently. She was no longer just the woman who cleaned her house. She was someone special, someone with a gift, someone who had given her cousin something priceless. "Why didn't you tell me?" Ashley signed to Lucy. Lucy looked down. "I was afraid you'd fire me, that you'd think I wasn't doing my job, that I was meddling where I didn't belong." Ashley looked at her, and for the first time, she saw Lucy not as an employee, but as a person who had given something invaluable to her cousin, without asking for anything in return, without expecting recognition, just because she could, just because she wanted to, just because her heart told her to. "Tommy," Ashley signed. "Show me." Tommy grinned. He took the guitar from Lucy. He pressed it against his chest and closed his eyes. Lucy started to play. A simple melody, a lullaby her father had taught her. And Ashley saw something she would never forget. She saw her cousin move, not dancing. Something deeper. His body was responding to the vibrations. His shoulders rose with the high notes. His hips swayed with the low notes. It was as if the music was moving him from the inside out, as if his body knew exactly what to do, even though his ears had never heard a thing. Tears started streaming down Ashley's cheeks, because she understood something in that moment. Music isn't sound. Sound is just the way most of us perceive it. But music is energy. It's vibration. It's something that exists beyond the ears. And Tommy, her deaf cousin, could finally feel it. Ashley went over to her cousin. She took his hand. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't know what to say, because words weren't enough. No words could express what she was feeling. The gratitude towards Lucy, the love for her cousin, the wonder of seeing something she thought was impossible. Tommy opened his eyes. He saw his cousin's tears and smiled. "Don't worry," he signed. "These are good tears. I know what they are now." And Ashley cried harder, because her cousin, the boy who never understood why people cried with music, now knew. He'd felt it in his own body, in his own heart. Lucy stayed silent, watching the scene unfold. And she thought about her father, about how he would have smiled if he could see this, about how proud he would be that his lesson lived on, that it continued to help, that it continued to change lives. "Dad," she thought, "look what you planted. Look what's growing. If you've made it this far, it's because this story is touching you. So let me tell you what happened next." Ashley wanted to do something, not just thank Lucy. She wanted to validate what was happening. She wanted to make sure it wasn't just her imagination, that what Tommy was experiencing was real. She called a friend, Patricia, a music professor at the local college, a specialist in music therapy. She told her what she'd seen, and Patricia wanted to see it with her own eyes. She came to the house on a Saturday afternoon. Tommy was nervous. He'd never shown this to anyone outside of Lucy. Lucy was nervous too. She was afraid the professor would say it was all nonsense, that it had no scientific basis, that it was just imagination. But Patricia didn't say any of that. She sat in silence while Lucy and Tommy did their routine, the guitar against the chest, the balloons, the vibrations, Tommy's body moving in response to each note. When they finished, Patricia had tears in her eyes. "This is music therapy," she said, "of a superior level." Lucy looked at her in surprise. "But I didn't study any of that." "It doesn't matter," said Patricia. "What you do is exactly what we teach at the college, but better, much better. Because you didn't learn it from a book. You learned it from life, from love, from the experience of caring for someone you loved." Patricia walked over to Lucy. "You know there are very few music programs for the deaf in the world." Lucy shook her head. "I didn't know that. And the ones that exist are very technical, very cold, They don't have what you have. What's that I have? Connection. Patricia pointed to Tommy. You didn't teach him music. You taught him to feel. There's a huge difference. Anyone can teach theory, but few can teach someone to open their heart to something new. You did it without realizing it, just because you cared. Lucy was silent. She'd never thought about what she did that way. For her, she was just sharing something her father had taught her. It wasn't special, it wasn't scientific, it was just love. But Patricia showed her that love was exactly what was missing in most education programs. That technology and methods were important, but that without love, without connection, without the genuine desire to help, nothing really worked. And Lucy had that in spades. You learned it from love. Patricia explained that there was research on music and deafness, that deaf people can feel music through vibrations, that some parts of the brain that process sound also process vibrations, and that what Tommy was experiencing wasn't just imagination, it was real, scientifically proven. Tommy started to cry again, not from sadness, from relief. His whole life, he'd felt excluded from something the world loved. His whole life, he'd seen people close their eyes and smile with the music, and he couldn't participate. Now he knew he could, just in a different way. After that day, things changed. Ashley promoted Lucy. She was no longer just the housekeeper. She was Tommy's companion. Her salary tripled. Her schedule changed. Now she spent half her time teaching Tommy, and the other half helping around the house. Patricia started working with them too. She taught them more advanced techniques, ways to amplify the vibrations, exercises for Tommy to develop his sensitivity. And something incredible started to happen. Tommy learned to play the guitar, not like hearing people, not following melodies he heard, following the vibrations he felt. At first, they were simple chords, the same ones Lucy had taught him. But over time, they became more complex. Tommy started to compose. He couldn't hear what he was creating, but he could feel it. And what he felt was beautiful. The first song he composed was called Silence. It was paradoxical. A deaf man composing a song called Silence. But Tommy explained that silence for him wasn't empty. It was potential. It was a blank canvas where he painted with vibrations. Lucy recorded the song, uploaded it to the internet, and something unexpected happened. It went viral, not because it sounded incredible, but because the story behind it was incredible. A young deaf man who learned to feel music, who learned to compose without hearing, who created something beautiful from silence. People started to comment, to share, to cry, watching the video of Tommy playing his guitar with his eyes closed, feeling every note, living every vibration. Journalists started calling, colleges wanted to study him, famous musicians wanted to meet him. And Tommy, the young man who thought he'd never understand music, suddenly was an inspiration to millions. His paintings changed completely. They were no longer meaningless abstracts. Now they were visual representations of songs. Each color was a note, each curve was a melody, each painting was a song that could be seen. Patricia called it synesthesia, the mixing of senses. Some deaf people develop the ability to see sound, to associate vibrations with colors, to experience music in ways that hearing people never could. Tommy was one of them, and his art started to gain attention. A gallery wanted to exhibit his paintings. Paintings of music, they called them. Works by a deaf artist who could see what most people only hear. The exhibition was a huge success, more than anyone had imagined. The first day, 200 people came. The second day, 500. By the third day, there was a line outside the gallery. Newspapers wrote about Tommy. Art magazines interviewed him. Television channels requested stories. And everyone wanted to know the same thing. How can a deaf man paint music? Tommy always answered the same way. I don't paint what I hear, I paint what I feel. And if I can feel it, anyone can. Hundreds of people came to see Tommy's works, to hear his story, to understand that music is much more than they thought. There was something special about those paintings, something that people felt, even if they couldn't explain it. It was as if Tommy had captured something that hearing people take for granted. The pure essence of music, without the noise, without the distractions, just the emotion, just the vibration, just the soul of each song. A woman approached a painting and started to cry. A man stared at another for 10 minutes without moving. A child asked if he could touch the colors, and Tommy smiled, because he'd finally found a way to share what he felt. To show the world that deafness wasn't a limitation, it was a different perspective, a window to something that most would never see. Ashley watched from a corner, proud, emotional, unable to believe how far her cousin had come. The boy she had cared for since he was orphaned, the young man who thought he'd never understand music. Now he was there, surrounded by admirers, by people who wanted to understand how he saw the world, how he felt what they heard. And all thanks to a housekeeper who had the courage to share what her father had taught her. Lucy was there all night, proud, happy, seeing how the young man she'd met months ago was now shining. Tommy gave a speech, in sign language, with an interpreter. My whole life, I felt excluded from music. I thought it was something I could never understand. But one woman taught me something. She taught me that music isn't heard, it's felt. And now, finally, I can feel it. He pointed to Lucy. Thanks to her, Lucy cried, not from sadness, from joy, from the feeling that her father, wherever he was smiling. Because what he had taught her as a child was now changing lives. A year later, Tommy did something that no one expected. But before I tell you that, let me tell you what happened with Lucy. Ashley not only tripled her salary, she made her a partner in a new project, a foundation to teach music to deaf people. They called it Soul Vibrations. The name was Tommy's idea, because that's exactly what Lucy had given him. Vibrations that reached the soul. The foundation started small. 1 room, 5 guitars, 10 deaf students. But it grew quickly, because there was demand. There were thousands of deaf people who wanted the same thing as Tommy. They wanted to understand what music was. They wanted to feel what the hearing world felt. They wanted to be part of something that had always been denied to them. Lucy taught 4 days a week. Tommy helped when he could. Patricia supervised the program and documented it for her research. And Ashley funded everything, without asking for anything in return, without expecting recognition, just because it was the right thing to do, because she'd seen what music had done for her cousin, and she wanted others to have the same opportunity. The foundation trained 200 students in its first year, 200 deaf people who learned to feel the music. Some learned to play instruments, others learned to dance, following the vibrations in the floor. Others simply learned to enjoy the songs in a way they had never imagined. It was beautiful. It was revolutionary. It was exactly what the world needed. And then, Tommy did something nobody expected. He gave a concert, a guitar concert, for the deaf. And when he announced it, people thought it was a joke. A concert for deaf people, and how could that work? But Tommy knew exactly what he was doing. He had planned every detail for months. Every seat had a vibration system. Every instrument was connected to tactile panels. Every song was designed to be felt, not heard. The idea was simple, but revolutionary. All the attendees were deaf. 220 people who had never been to a concert, who had never experienced live music, who had never been a part of something like this. Everyone had guitars or instruments they could press against their bodies, and Tommy played on stage, while everyone felt the music with him. It wasn't just a concert, it was a statement, a way of saying that deaf people deserve music just as much as anyone else. That silence is not exclusion. It's just a different way of listening. There was no applause. There were hands waving in the air, the way deaf people applaud, a sea of moving hands, a sea of people who could finally participate in something the world had denied them. The concert lasted an hour, but it felt like a lifetime. Each song that Tommy played had a special meaning. The first was Silence, his first composition. The second was for Lucy, a song he had written especially for her. The third was Waves, inspired by the drawings he made as a kid, trying to imagine sound. And the last was Dad, a song Lucy didn't know. Tommy had kept it a secret. It was a song dedicated to Lucy's father, the man she never knew, but who had given her everything he had, the ability to feel the music. When Tommy finished playing Dad, Lucy was crying. She couldn't stop. It was as if all the tears she had held back since her father's death had finally found a way out. It was as if her father was there, listening, feeling, proud. Tommy came down from the stage. He walked towards Lucy and hugged her, without words, without sign language, just a long hug, deep, full of gratitude, full of love, full of everything that words could not express. Lucy was in the front row, with her 9-year-old daughter, who wasn't deaf, but who had learned that music was much more than her ears could capture. Ashley was in the back, watching, crying, because her cousin, the boy who never understood music, was now sharing it with the world, in his own way, in the only way he could, and it was beautiful. Patty was there too, taking notes, planning how to incorporate Lucy's method into her college program, because what a housekeeper had discovered out of love was more valuable than years of academic research. After the concert, Tommy went over to Lucy. He hugged her tight. They didn't need words. They didn't need signs. The hug said it all. Thank you for showing me that music exists for everyone, even for me. Lucy hugged him back and thought of her father, of the afternoons when he would put her hand on his throat while he sang, of the nights when she played guitar and he felt the vibrations through the floor, of the love he had taught her, that there are no barriers when the heart wants to connect. Dad, she thought, I hope you're watching this, but because what you taught me is changing the world. 3 years after the first concert, something beautiful happened. Tommy met someone, a young, 26-year-old deaf woman named Sophia. She was a painter too. She had come to one of Tommy's exhibitions, and they had fallen in love. Not with words, not with sounds, with looks, with signs, with shared vibrations. Sophia had learned to feel the music at Lucy's foundation. She was one of the first students, and when she met Tommy, she felt she had found someone who understood her world, someone who saw music the way she did, someone who knew that silence was not emptiness. It was potential. They got married a year later, in a wedding unlike any other, a wedding that redefined what it means to celebrate with music. There was no music to be heard. There was music to be felt. Guitars against the chest of every guest. Balloons vibrating with every chord. Wooden floors that transmitted the rhythm of the waltz. Each deaf guest received a kit upon entering. A large balloon. A vibrating pad to put under their feet. Instructions from Lucy on how to feel each song. The hearing guests were amazed. They had never experienced music that way. They had never felt the notes pass through their bodies. They had never closed their eyes and let the vibrations guide them. It was a revelation for everyone, deaf and hearing, united by something deeper than sound. Tommy and Sophia's first dance was unforgettable. They didn't dance following the melody. They danced following the vibrations of the floor, their bodies moving in perfect sync, as if they could feel exactly the same thing, because they could. And when they finished, there was no applause. There were hands in the air, a sea of moving hands, the most beautiful way to applaud. It was the most beautiful wedding Ashley had ever seen. Lucy played the guitar during the ceremony, the same guitar her father had when he died, the same guitar that had changed Tommy's life. And as she played, she thought about everything that had happened, about how a housekeeper had ended up being the matron of honor at a famous artist's wedding, about how a lesson from her deaf father had changed so many lives, about how love always finds a way to connect, even if the world says it's impossible, even if the senses say it can't be done. Love always finds a way. And so ends this story, not with a perfect ending, because life isn't perfect. Tommy is still deaf. He always will be. But now he knows something he didn't know before, that music is not denied to him. It just reaches him differently. And that difference isn't a limitation. It's a gift. Lucy continues working with Tommy. She continues teaching other deaf people to feel the music. She continues carrying her father's legacy to people he never knew. Ashley continues to admire what a housekeeper achieved, something that all her money could never buy. The connection between her cousin and a world that had been denied to him. Lily continues her research. She continues documenting. She published a study on Lucy's method. She called it the method of the heart, because that's exactly what it was. A method based on love, on connection, on patience, on the genuine desire to help someone discover something new. The study was 120 pages long, documenting every session Lucy had with Tommy, every technique, every discovery, every moment of progress. Lily interviewed other deaf individuals who had learned with Lucy. She recorded their testimonies, analyzed their brain responses, and discovered something fascinating. The brains of deaf individuals processed musical vibrations in a similar way to how hearing individuals process sound. The same areas activated, the same emotions arose, the same pleasure was experienced, only through a different pathway. The study became a reference in universities around the world. Professors cited it. Researchers studied it. Music therapy programs incorporated it into their curricula. Hospitals started using the method. Schools for the deaf adopted it. Music conservatories included it in their programs, and it all started with a housekeeper who didn't even realize she was doing something special. Lucy gave lectures. At first, with fear. She wasn't an academic. She didn't have a degree. She had no experience speaking in public, but she had her story, and that was more powerful than any degree. In each lecture, she talked about her father, about how he had taught her that music is felt, about the old guitar he had when he died, about Tommy and the attic, about the tears and the balloons and the vibrations. And people cried every time, because Lucy's story wasn't just about music. It was about love, about connection, about finding ways to reach the people the world forgets. It was about not giving up, about believing that there's always a way, even if it seems impossible, even if no one else has ever tried. There's always a way. And Lucy had found it, not because she was a genius, not because she was special, but because she loved, and love always finds a way. Lily continues showing the world that music is much bigger than we think. Lucy's daughter is now 12 years old. Her name is Lily, like the grandmother she never met. Lily isn't deaf, but she knows sign language. She learned it from Tommy, from Sophia, from the hundreds of students who passed through the foundation. And she knows something else. She knows that music isn't heard, it's felt. Lucy taught her that since she was little. She put guitars on her chest, showed her how to feel the vibrations, taught her that there are ways to experience the world that most people don't know. And Lily grew up with that lesson. Now she wants to be a music therapist. She wants to continue her mother's work. She wants to bring music to people who the world believes can't feel it. Lucy looks at her and smiles, because she sees her father in her daughter's eyes. The same curiosity, the same determination, the same love for connecting with people. The legacy continues from generation to generation, from heart to heart. And that's the most beautiful thing of all, that what Lucy's father taught her didn't die with him. It lives in her. It lives in Tommy. It lives in Sophia. It lives in the 200 students at the foundation. And now, it lives in Lily. Love doesn't die. It multiplies. It expands. It reaches people we never imagined. And it changes the world in ways we can't predict. All because someone decided to share. All because someone decided to love. And somewhere, in a gallery, hangs a painting by Tommy, a painting full of vibrant colors, of curves that rise and fall, of shapes that seem to move. The title of the painting is simple: The First Song I Felt. And when people ask what it means, Tommy smiles and signs. It's the song a housekeeper played for me with a guitar on her chest. The day I discovered that music isn't heard, it's felt. If this story touched your heart, I want you to remember something. There are no barriers when love wants to connect. There are no limitations when someone wants to teach. There are no impossibilities when the heart guides the way. Lucy didn't have a music therapy degree. She had no certifications. She had nothing more than the love her father had taught her. And with that, she changed the life of a young man who thought he'd never understand music. We all have something to teach. We all have something to give. The question is, are we willing to share it? Even if no one pays us, even if no one sees us, even if we think it's not our place. Lucy thought it wasn't her place, that she was just a housekeeper, that it wasn't her place to teach music to her boss's cousin. But her heart told her something different, and she listened to her heart, and she changed everything. You can do it too. You don't need to be an expert. You don't need to have a degree. You just need to have something to give, and the willingness to give it. Think about the people around you, the ones who suffer, the ones who are alone, the ones the world has forgotten. Maybe you can't solve their problems. Maybe you can't cure their diseases. Maybe you can't change their circumstances, but you can give them something. Your time, your attention, your love. And sometimes that's all they need. Sometimes a hug changes more than $1 million. Sometimes a kind word saves more than any medication. Sometimes simply being there is the greatest gift you can give. Lucy didn't know she was doing something special. For her, she was just sharing what her father had taught her. She was just trying to help someone she saw lost. She was just doing what her heart asked her to. And that was enough. That changed everything. That created a foundation. That inspired thousands of people. That became a legacy. All because a housekeeper decided not to ignore a deaf young man, staring at a guitar with curiosity. All because she decided to share instead of keeping it to herself. All because she chose love instead of fear. And you can do the same. Today. Now. With the people around you. Though you don't have to wait to be an expert. You don't have to wait to have more money. You don't have to wait for anything. You just have to decide. Decide that you're going to share what you have. Decide that you're going to love the people around you. Decide that you're going to make a difference, even if it's small. Even if no one sees it. Even if no one thanks you for it. Because the difference you make is never small to the person who receives it. And you never know how far it can reach. Thank you for listening until the end. Thank you for giving your time to Lucy and Tommy. Thank you for remembering that music isn't heard, it's felt. And that everyone, absolutely everyone, can feel it. We just need someone to show us how. The next time you hear a song, close your eyes. Place your hand on your chest. Feel it vibrate. And think of Tommy, of Lucy, of a deaf father who taught his daughter that love is the most beautiful music. And always remember, music isn't heard, it's felt. See you in the next story.